And we are live. JT here. Welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I just want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are joining us live as we stream into our Facebook community, whether you are watching the replay on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to keep your mind wide open. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will allow you, most importantly, to succeed at the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We connected a few months ago on social, and one of the first things that struck me was just her positivity, her energy she was bringing, and just how she's choosing to be a catalyst of change in this world. My guest in the huddle today is, I love it, she put former NCAA and U Sport hoopster, which I loved seeing that. She is the founder of Canletes and the founder of the Black Canadian Coaches Association. My guest in the huddle today is Lee Anna Osei. How are you today, Coach?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm grateful for another day. I see every day as an opportunity. I think once you woke up, you've already won. But I'm enjoying it, and I'm really grateful to be here on the huddle with you, Coach JT. And what's up to everybody tuning in?
Okay. So, Coach, one thing I often remind myself, and it's a daily practice, is to count my blessings. And one of the biggest blessings that we can give someone is our time and our energy. Mm-hmm. So again, I just want to thank you so much for choosing to invest some of your time and energy into being here with me and our community today. And thank you for choosing to be a shining light in this world, Coach.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just paying it forward. I've been a recipient and a beneficiary like you.
Okay. So, Coach, we'll dive right in here. So one of the ideas I often like to remind people of is that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, is there an interesting fact? I had a former coaching colleague who said, we all have our quirks. Is there something that maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you would be open to sharing with our community?
Sure. Well, I've got a few interesting facts about me. I think most people are just kind of taken aback by my music selection. Like I think, sport music, like a lot of similarities there in terms of the market, but I really love all kinds of music. And like whether I've been, in a team setting with my athletes or with my colleagues at work or, coaching, people always get thrown off because one second I'll be listening to gospel, the next I'm listening to like Billy Talent, then I've got like Blink-182 pulled up, and then I've got like J. Cole, and, like even with the youth I work with now, they're like, like, who are you? But I'm super appreciative of music. I personally have never learned instruments like outside of maybe grade school, but I have a sibling who's like, extremely gifted and plays the guitar. And, I'm sort of envious of people who are musically gifted and lyrically inclined in that kind of way.
Okay. I love that. And why I love that is it just shows your openness to learning, right? Like you find the opportunity that you celebrate all kinds of music, right? And I think it just is a testament to your open-mindedness to life, it speaks volumes about you, Coach.
This morning was a chaos kind of morning. I had some chaos throwbacks, and just with the workout routine.
Okay. So, Coach, sport has obviously played an important role for you in your life. You were a high-level athlete, and in the process, you then transitioned into being a high-level coach. So I'm curious from you, what has been the biggest lesson that sport has taught you that you still find yourself applying to your life today?
That's a good question, JT. I think the most important lesson that I've learned is that it's okay to try something new and it's okay to suggest something new and different. And I feel like early on, well, in my playing careers, I pretty much was like tunnel vision because it's school and it's basketball.
Yeah.
But ever since I've transitioned into coaching, I found like, I've really started to look at, hey, where are there some opportunities to give back? And like even when I came back from the States in 2012, right away I saw a gap in the things we could be doing in women's basketball in particular. But I would say that's probably the biggest thing. And I would say the most courageous I've been has probably been in the last few years and with the founding of the BCCA, right? Like an organization really devoted to advancing racial equity, right? And everything from like our name to kind of what we do. And yeah, I've discovered that it's okay to try new things and it's okay to propose new things. And whether or not that's received on the other end as positive or not positive, I've learned to worry less about that. And I think part of it is also like it's like understanding it's okay to be wrong. And I've always been someone who, like, let's say, I've always kind of looked at things in different perspectives before I would have input. And so, whenever I would suggest things, like in any kind of setting, I'd always have like, on the other side, and I'll, play devil's advocate. And I feel like it's kind of helped me navigate that process a little bit better. But, I've never been afraid to say, oh my goodness, that's a way better idea. Or yeah, I was wrong in that assumption, or, and just having that kind of growth mindset. And so I think that's also helped with kind of the sense that, hey, it's okay to be innovative in this space and try to do new things.
Coach, what I really heard from you again was the power of being open to diversity of thought, right? Like being able to listen to multiple perspectives. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It sounds like that has been something that you value. So I'm curious, is that something, I know you mentioned, being able to look at things from multiple perspectives was something that you remember doing earlier. Was there a particular instant or was there a particular person in your life that really shared with you the importance of being open to diversity of thought, multiple perspectives, the ability to actively listen to someone else's lived experience?
You know what? I'd probably credit a lot of my diverse thinking to when I did my undergrad and my master's. I was part of the Tri-U history program at Laurier. And so it's like Laurier, Western, and I think Guelph. And kind of the last few years of my undergrad and when I did my master's really kind of got me understanding the value of, and again, as a historian, you do historiographies, right? Like you literally are just reiterating kind of authors' thoughts and perspectives. So I feel like I can credit a lot of that to my educational background. And I consider myself in academia. I'm not an official professor. I didn't do my PhD or anything, but I value the importance of research and not so much facts, but supporting ideas, supporting claims, and really looking at things from other perspectives. So definitely from an educational standpoint, I think that's where I picked that up. That's a great question because I never really thought about it like that. Before, like it was, has there been anyone or anything that's kind of gotten me that way? I definitely, I see that's the thing about school, right? Like it really enhances your thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And what I'm really hearing from you is, again, the power of being objective, right? And I think it's very easy, like, we've been conditioned to live in a world that it's easy to come from a place of judgment.
Right.
But it's interesting when we come from a place of curiosity and we ask questions and we're just take things as is, just observing it from a neutral mindset and truly being objective, that it's very freeing to live that way, right? And that's how you start to affect change in your life.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Okay. So I'm curious, right? Obviously, depending on when people are watching or listening to this, we are coming out of an interesting last couple of years, right? And being respectful, everyone has, experienced this, different people have experienced different things. What I love about what you did is you chose to use this interesting time to really be the change, as I like to say. And you started the BCCA. So I'm curious, what was the inspiration? What was the driver? What was the thing that just sparked that now's the time where I'm going to be the change? I'm going to help lead the change.
Yeah. And I would say, to answer that in the short version, the catalyst really came from like the many colleagues and mentors and friends who are like coaches or who are working with athletes or who are involved in recreational programming communities around like, hey, what could creating a platform like this present in terms of accessibility, in terms of really trying to disrupt some narratives and implement new ones, to celebrate individuals. And so I would say, like, really at the outbreak of COVID, and everything was locked up. I myself, like, I was living alone in kind of rural Antigonish, and so I had like a lot of free time, and I was like, man, okay, like I guess I'm gonna do this, and I got so much encouragement from my peers. So that's kind of like the 2020 COVID and things that we're seeing, in our media, as it related to kind of racial instances of racial violence, for example. From a long-standing perspective, since I started coaching in Nova Scotia, and really my transition to becoming like a professional sport coach, I was working as a full-time coach at a prep school in Brantford, Ontario, before I went out there. I really started to think hard about policies, procedures, and like every environment has, or rather, let's say workplaces, for example, like there's just ways that you do things. And sometimes I find the way that we do things may not be exactly how it's set up, which makes sense, right? Like, because we've got to always kind of manage, where are we budgeting wise? How many athletes are we servicing? There's so many things that kind of differentiate that. But I went through an experience where I was victimized, and with a lot of racial undertones, and it made me kind of pause and really think about, like, whoa, like, wait a second, is there something in place for this? There must be, like, there's got to be. Like, let me do some research. And my default is always like, let me do some research. Thank God for the internet, right? And so I started looking in the academic space, like, are there publications on this? I started to look at safe sport. I started to look at youth sport regulations, regulations for our national and provincial territorial sport organizations. And I was like, I must be missing something. Like, there's got to be something around here. And I would also suggest, though, like, as much as my personal experience became a sort of catalyst, like, and this would have been 3 years prior to the outbreak of COVID, just about 3 years, that experience actually connected me to so many racialized coaches across the country at all levels. And the questions I was asking, I uncovered that the questions that I was asking, many people had asked before me, and some were still asking. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay, so I really got to do this. Like, I got to support it in whatever way I can, because this isn't the first time. And this question has been asked for so long. And so I would say that fact alone really kind of encouraged me to kind of do the work, if you will, like a lot of the early work. And then lastly, dealing with the impacts and repercussions of racism is something that I hold close to my heart. I lost a brother by suicide. My brother never played sports. but racism was something that he dealt with in the workplace. He was one of very few people of color, and some of my last interactions with him was around kind of his work environment. He worked all the time. He was a chartered professional accountant and then an auditor for one of our larger corporate companies. And, you know, I just didn't understand. Like it went completely over my head. And again, I think part of it is, you know, I was really young. But I didn't think it was something that, I didn't realize the impact of it because I myself hadn't experienced that. And I didn't know anybody else that had, right? And particularly in the sports space. And so knowing that that's something that he struggled with, and it's not to say that was, you know, dealing with racism is the reason why he took his life, but I think a mixture of those things, those three things certainly became kind of like my rallying call, like, okay, if I'm going to go for it, I'm going to go for it. And I'm really thankful that I had the support of so many people in launching the BCCA.
Well, Coach Lee, I first and foremost, I just, again, want to thank you for being so open to sharing your journey. What I really heard from you is that, you know, some of this pain from your past, and right, we've all experienced it, you sort of made this decision to turn your pain into a purpose, and that purpose was to affect change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, you know, one thing I often share, right, through the nature of, you know, the coaching work I do is, you know, change isn't always easy. Change isn't always comfortable, but change is necessary. Change is part of, you know, it's embedded in us as humans. What has been your biggest takeaway, you know, that lesson that you've gotten as you've really been a driver of this change, right? Because I know you're very passionate about creating greater platforms for marginalized groups, right? Whether it's females, whether it's the BIPOC community, whether it's creating more opportunity for female coaches, right? In male prevalence sports. Yeah, I'm just curious, what has been your biggest takeaway?
I think my biggest takeaway has been that I think I've learned a lot about myself throughout the process. I mean, everyone is their own unique person, and you know, your experiences shape who you are, how you think, how you process things. But I feel like I've really become so much more self-aware and educated over the last 2 or 3 years. And it's kind of, I guess, I don't know if it was Aristotle or Plato, but one of them said, the more you know, the more you don't know. And so I thought I was done with school a few years ago. I was like, if I go to school again, it's probably to become an NBA agent. Like I'm not, I'm done with school. But I've really been so excited about just learning, like, and I know, like, I've heard a ton of people say, you know, life is about constantly learning and growing. And you hear that, but it's so cliche. Like, what does that actually mean? And I feel like I finally get it now, right? And it's about the more that you know, the more you can implement some of that knowledge, or it might actually just it might amplify what you feel like your passion or your purpose is, right? And so I think that's probably been the thing that I've realized the most. And I'm really grounded in the fact that, like, what brings me joy is helping others. And so to me, like, I loved being a full-time youth sport coach, but my passion for sport, my passion for the community, my passion to coach, work with athletes isn't something that was defined or created by that opportunity. I had that long before, and I still have it now. I'm gonna have it, like, it's not going anywhere. Yeah. And when I really prayed about things and understood it in that context, I was like, oh, okay, well, I just need to make sure that whatever I'm putting my energy into and whatever I'm representing aligns with who I truly believe I am. And if those two things don't align, I don't need to be part of that. Because personally, for me, like, you could give me a 9-to-5 job, right? And like, I'd have no problem. I'd probably really like, depending on where I'm working, like if I had a 9 to 5 job at MLSC, I'd love that job. And then I'd head out and probably coach afterwards, and on weekends. So that's probably the most exciting thing. I feel like we're just in a world of opportunity. I know it's been tough with COVID and everything, but like to me, that's kind of what I've been looking towards. That's what I've been focusing on, man, like who I am, what I represent, and how that becomes my purpose, right? And just having that faith and that confidence that like that love isn't gonna go anywhere, regardless of what it is I do, right? And I think some of us are lucky because what we do becomes that, right? And I think that's the goal, because then you have that harmony, and then you start tying in things like family and love and relationships. So I really feel like I'm on a journey in that sense.
Coach Lee, what I really heard from you is you chose to use this last few years
Mhm.
as an opportunity to learn about the greatest subject, which is yourself, right? Like you're truly getting to know yourself. And why that resonated with me is I feel like I've been on a similar journey the last few years.
Mhm.
And why I have found it such a powerful is, again, coming from a background in education, it's interesting that so much of what we're taught in school, so much of what we're told is important are
Mhm.
things outside of us, right? And again, it's just
Mhm.
that's
Right.
just that group way of thinking, right? That's that culture that school is, you got to go learn your math, your sciences, your English, right? All this stuff. But we actually have very little opportunity within traditional education to actually really get to learn about
Right.
ourselves. And
Yeah.
I love what you shared, because when you learn more about yourself, that led you to getting greater clarity that what really fires you up is, I just want to help and serve more people.
Mhm.
Right. So that's
Mhm.
what I really heard from you,
Yeah.
Coach.
And that's why I always say everything happens for a reason. The amazing people you connect with, some of the unfortunate experiences you have, like it all is part of this plan, because I feel like me being so far away from home, from family, from friends, from things that were really familiar, it allowed me to really quiet that noise and have those um, literal kind of inner thoughts and conversations. And for me, like I'm a big faith-based person, so it was a lot of alone time. And so I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had in the past, because they've all been a part of this bigger plan.
I love that. Right. What I really hear from you is like, celebrate your past, right?
Mhm.
All parts of it. It's made you who you are.
It's true. Hmm.
Okay. So I'm curious, Coach Lee, like, again, we're in an interesting time. I feel people know that it's time for change, right? In many different areas, right? Like I think the last 2 years, that ability to pause for the world as we knew it to sort of just, let's just say, shift. I feel like there's been this consciousness, this awareness that we can do better, right? We can all work together to make this world a better place, right? And I fundamentally believe that everyone wants to be happy, healthy, and wealthy. Everyone deserves it. Everyone is worthy of it, and everyone should have it. So I guess my question is, what can, someone watching this, someone listening to this might be going, yeah, well, I'm one person. What can I do? Like, what is something that you would share with them in terms of how they can be a catalyst and driver of change for the people around them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the greatest tool we have to our disposal right now is the power to connect through technology. And like, I've done everything from just like copy paste messages, sending Twitter DMs to people I've never met, never knew, don't know, to looking at um, faculty lists on school websites. So I would say, if you're someone that wants to get something going, or you're curious, or you're looking for answers, or you feel like you can provide some sort of skills, don't be afraid to use technology to do it. And there's so many different ways now, right? Like, I mean, for goodness sakes, you could pay a LinkedIn premium and message pretty much anybody, like anybody, anywhere, So I would say, like, and I know, like, personally for me, that was just like mind boggling. Like, whoa, like we've got Linktree, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, like the list just goes on and on and on. And so, you know, and also like being someone that was just geographically so far from everyone, like that honestly saved me in a lot of ways too. So like, you know, these kind of platforms have been really important and significant in terms of connecting people, whether it is to get something started or to just seek support yourself.
I love that. I love that, Billy, right? Like social media is a tool, right? I think of even how we connected. I think it was just one random message. And it's interesting how
Right.
one message, right, sparked, you know, some conversation, and you find like-minded people. You find people that, you know, have a similar passions and interests as you. And who knows where that conversation leads to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm curious again. I view you as someone who's a leader, right? Who's really pushing this change, right, in the BIPOC community, especially around providing more diversity, equity, inclusion. What needs to happen for us to get to that next step? For us to really truly get to that next level where there's more opportunity for everyone?
Yeah, I would really like to see us look at our levels of sport organizations and like categorize them. Like some are already categorized, for example, our provincial, our PTSO system, right? But as it relates to the DEI piece, like it's such a new space that that part actually isn't standardized for arguably like, you know, like the standard of high performance in every province. So what does that mean? Well, it tells us that at the grassroots and recreational levels, like we're way far behind. We know we don't have America's market per se, but you know, I look at like where we've come with Safe Sport and the Canadian Center of Mental Health and Sport, for example, and organizations like that. I feel like we've got to start somewhere. I'd really like to see us get to a level where collegiate athletic departments have an established standard of, hey, this is how we're going to do things, whether it's in relation to hiring policies, whether it's hey, here's some awareness stuff we're going to do. Like in the women's basketball space, I know we do like a shoot for a cure campaign each year, right? Like that's something super specific. Pretty sure all teams kind of buy into something like that. But more specifically, I would like to see more regulations input as well, not just things that, you know, hopefully there are leaders that want to do it. I kind of want I want to see us move to more of like an affirmative action kind of process where, hey, like, here's how we can really start to address this from the top down, so that the people down here aren't the ones going through these generational cycles that we're trying to break. And I think as we were doing that, like we know we have in the non-sport space, like we've got a ton of stuff in like an implicit bias training. You know, we don't have a ton of academic works published, let's say in Canadian sport, but part of that has been like the challenge is like from a sports sociologist standpoint or anti-racism standpoint, we don't know where to go because there's just no standard for this, right? So I would like to see that happen dually. Like, let's start bringing in some regulations for if I'm a U Sport team, if I'm a CCAA team, here's how it works for our provincial teams. You know, here's how it's going to work for, and I feel like that's what we need to do. And then we encourage, you know, the publications, the sport information resource centers, for example. Canadian Women in Sport does a lot, like in the research and publication space. I want to see us connect that a little bit more. And the cool thing over the last few years is like a lot of, let's say, like the annual conferences or presentations or symposiums that are held in that higher up sports space that's not necessarily related to like games, tournaments, and competition. Like barriers have been broken simply because now we can do things virtually, right? And so we see now for the first time, like, whoa, like we can have a Football Canada diversity task force, but it doesn't need to just be people in our immediate circles that we know that are football coaches. Like we can actually bring in someone from, another NSO, let's say Canada Basketball, that went, that similarly did this, and it's just new. It's new, and so I think it presents as an incredible opportunity for us. And obviously, there's no like quick, easy answer, but I would really like to see the I guess the sport sectors start to find what that standard means for them, right? Like, what does this mean for an OBA team? What does this mean for our prep school system? What does this mean for our national team system?
I love that, Coach. And what I really heard from you, again, I love how you talked about, it's creating these frameworks, right? These policies, these standards, right?
Mhm.
And what I love is how you went another level. Like you talked about, now with the way our world, like I think the last 2 years, it's taught us how much we can actually accomplish, right? Like how
Mhm.
even technology does actually provide more accessibility. It does
Right.
actually allow for greater diversity, inclusion, and equity because, like you said, geography is no longer a limiting factor.
Mhm.
And what really sparked my interest there was when you were talking about, as a director of sport at Football Ontario, I would love to talk with you because I view you as an expert. Yeah, what are some of the best practices, right? And leaning on you and saying, yeah, I'd love to share from your perspective your best practices, and through there we can create more alignment. And I guess my thought, just and what got me all jazzed up, is just imagine what would be possible if all of our high performance, all of our governing bodies got together and just said, here, let's standardize. It's the same. So whether an athlete is coming into football, basketball, hockey, soccer, they all get the same experience. Like, I'm just thinking, wow, like
Mhm.
you talk about creating change, that creates
Mhm.
change.
And it doesn't need to happen all at once, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, what's really cool is the Coaching Association of Canada um, is putting out Canada's first anti-racism in sport e-learning module. It's going to be free. It's going to be accessible on their website. The BCCA was part of that process. The Ideas Research Lab at the University of Toronto was part of that process. We had a task force representative from, everyone from kind of recreational coaches to academics to PTSO leaders like yourself. And like, it's been it's amazing because we've never had something like this. And I think this, once we start getting into this space now, like maybe a great goal over the next 1 to 3 years is like, let's get all our coaches educated in this space, because we know for our sports system, that's going to be mom that just wants to help out the team that doesn't have a coach. It's going to be the former athlete coming back from the US. It's going to be the aspiring coach who just graduated from U of T, right? Like, it now gives everyone what that needs to look like. And like, for safe sport, like that should be the same. Like, we should not have teams and organizations where everyone is not educated in that. And I can tell you that, like, that's not even a standard in some of our most formalized sport leagues, and like, that's a shocker. So we know
Yeah.
for sure, again, it's not happening at any other level. And in our market, it almost all is grassroots. Like, we've got, like, I don't even know what the percentage would be, but there's 56 Canadian university athletic institutions, maybe 150 Canadian college institutions, but then thousands and thousands and thousands more kids who are at those lower levels, right? Participating. So yeah, great deal of opportunity there for us to lead.
Yeah, no, and I love, again, just, one word you always talk about is opportunity. And I think as a high level coach, many of the people that listen are high level coaches, right? And one of the things I think we all crave is those athletes that are coachable, that they're open-minded to feedback, right? And those typically are some of our most enjoyable athletes that we work with. So I
Mhm.
love that you bring up that point, is we have to be the change first. We have
Right.
to demonstrate a willingness to
Mhm.
be open to learning new things, right? To really demonstrating what it means to be a lifelong learner, to become better. And then when we do that, it's actually going to show our athletes, it's going to lead by example, which I think is is a win-win for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. So coach, I want to be respectful of your time. So, one of my biggest purposes or my biggest purpose in life is to show others what's possible when they go all in, right? When they truly bet on themselves. And I love stretching people. I love, getting them to think in possibilities. So I guess my question to you is, through all this amazing work you're doing, what would 10xing the vision, right? Like for you, like being able to serve, 10x that, what would that ideal version of your day, your life look like to you? I'm curious.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great question. I would say right now, I think our greatest opportunity ties right now from our biggest challenge, which really is sponsorship, right? It's just like not really being able to like put all of our efforts towards it. So for example, like with the BCCA, our executive team, coaching is a hat that we all wear, but, we've got moms, dads, like multiple jobs, school, like just different responsibilities. And what I would really love to get to a point to is like, hey, like we've got something that's sustainable, whether it be through the services that are provided, or through joint partnerships, given kind of the landscape that we're trying to cover, right? Like Sport Canada, Canadian Tire Jumpstart, MLSE, like, there's sport, CSIO, like there's a number of ways, like my mom might say, there's a million ways to skin a cat, if you will.
Yeah.
But I would say like just trying to bridge that gap, I would say is kind of our biggest challenge right now. And so to me, like I would love to get to the point where I can wake up and be like, man, like we get to do this, and we could fairly compensate people for their time, because it is a lot of time, and a lot of work, with everyone from interns, coaches, academics, health experts, but again, it goes back to what you said in the beginning, right? Like one of the most valuable thing that you can give someone is your time. And so it speaks to the significance and like that legacy piece, right? We really feel like we can create some positive, long-standing change in Sport Canada. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to do. And I want to also shout out my Canletes team, because when I was a full-time youth sport coach for the last few years, like I haven't really been able to do much. Like, I get a lot of credit for the work that gets done, but it's not me, like we have an amazing team of volunteers that execute like a ton of different initiatives and events throughout the course of the year. And again, like on top of their additional duties as full-time teachers or, full-time moms and those sorts of things. And I would really like to see the corporate sector and large organizations start to work with groups that are servicing kind of these groups, right? And for example, I know sorry, I know I'm rambling on here, but I know there's a gap between kind of opportunities for like grants or funding, but then how to get that information out to equity seeking groups is like, that's also a huge gap in our economy and in our sport when it has been, because we've heard from organizations who are like giving out the grants say, hey, like we get the same applicants each year. We just don't know how to get this information out to those groups, right? And so that's like another gap that I think we would do well in trying to bridge together. And again, so it goes back to, you got to be courageous, right? We got to reach out. We got to send those emails. We got to follow people on Twitter. We got to, however which way we could do it.
Interesting. What I really heard from you, streamline the process, right? Like let's remove barriers, right? So we can bless more people.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, Coach Lee, I know that you have inspired someone that is watching and listening to this. What can people do to help and support what you're growing with the BCCA or the Canletes? What's the best way people can show their support and, become part of the change?
Sure. So for Canletes, Canletes is we're a not-for-profit organization, and we classify ourselves as kind of like the premier organization for women's basketball, mainly in Ontario, but also to some extent like across the country. We do everything from like hosting events, showcase stuff. We highlight athletes at the perspective level, our kids in the States, our youth sport level athletes. We look for grants and those sorts of things. And for Canletes, as we start to open up, like we'd love to see people in the building, like come to quote, our folks over at Canada Basketball, like watch women win. Basketball is the fastest growing sport in the country. I know it's not the only one, but it's a popular sport. There's been talk about a WNBA team being landed here. We have so many amazing women who have come from our sports system, and whether they're still athletes or they've transitioned into coaching or officiating or sport businesses, like it's just an awesome space. When you get to these local basketball tournaments, I mean, there's a real home feel about it, right? And Nike Canada has jumped on some stuff pre-COVID, and Under Armour, and I really feel like it's going places. So we would love to see people come out to our events, come watch our future Olympians, our next wave of women who are winning on the court. And basketball is such an accessible sport, as well. And so you're going to see kind of a wide variety. Actually, this weekend we're hosting a Black History Hoop Series tournament, and we've got teams in from Quebec, Manitoba, Alberta, and I think those might be the only three, but we try to do a lot in that space. So you can find us at www.canletes.ca or on Twitter and Instagram, Canletes_sports. For the BCCA, we haven't done a single in-person event. We're hoping we can do that in the future. We'd like to do something annually around, coaching awards, perhaps a symposium where we can have kind of sport businesses kind of market their stuff. But again, our biggest challenge for the BCCA right now, I would say, is sponsorship, because there's so many things that we can do. There's so many things we can do. We just finished our BIPOC female hangout, which was led by Mavis Zaka out in Saskatchewan. And she does a lot in kind of mental health and wellness and managing anxiety. She's a former mentee of our Black Female Coach Mentorship Program. We've got a Black Student Athlete Fund launched at the Canadian Center for Mental Health and Sport. So there's an opportunity to give there. We've done a number of publications already, and we're hoping to do more. So working with academics, even our day-to-day stuff, like telling the stories of people who have been builders in our community. We want an opportunity to maybe intern some aspiring journalists, right? So there's so much that we want to do. I kind of get excited because it all kind of ties into how we can make sport accessible. So you could find us at www.thebcca.com or follow us on Instagram or Twitter, BCC_association. And anybody could be a member of the BCCA. You do not need to be Black or Indigenous or a person of color to be a member. It's a free membership. And we're really excited about kind of the things that we're going to be able to do moving forward. But giving for the BCCA would probably be the biggest ask that I'd have to kind of support our initiatives.
Okay. Well, I'll be more than happy to share everything out in the description section on the podcast, on Facebook, on YouTube. So if any of this piques your interest, because I know it has even sparked my curiosity even more, feel free to connect with Coach Lee on all those. So Coach, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for the amazing woman you are, right? The great daughter, the great sister, the great teacher, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing I have really come to admire about you is just how positive, how you are someone who always looks for the opportunity, how you're always just someone who's willing to be the change. And I know in the short time we've known each other, you are someone who always can make me smile, that always shines bright. It's just, you know, when I see a message from you, it's just, I don't know, it lights me up. So I just want to thank you for reminding me of that simple reminder that we all have the power to be the change. So thank you for that, Coach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially today, right? Like we're going through so much, but I want everybody who's tuned in to know, like, you're awesome. You're amazing. Wherever you are, things will get better. If things are great, they're going to be even greater. If things are hard, know that it's going to get better. And there are people out there that can support you. You know, I think like we've got so much capacity to love as humans. Like we're naturally social beings. And I think, you know, with lockdowns and stuff, it's really disrupted some of that. And even for our young people, I think our young people have been the most marginalized because they just don't have the resources or the economic means to get in a car and drive or go see who they want to see, right? And yeah, I want to encourage everyone, like, just keep going, man. If you woke up, you've already won. Okay, shout out my boy Navel Provo. That's who I got that from. But if you woke up, you've already won.
Okay. So folks, here is my reminder to you. Knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of that great knowledge that actually creates great results. Coach Lee drops so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed as an athlete, but more importantly, in the game of life. So take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every time in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. So have a blessed rest of your day. And I will chat with you next time in the huddle. Have a great day, everyone.